Make your next move with American Express Business Platinum. You'll get 5 times membership rewards points on flights and prepaid hotels booked on AmexTravel.com. Plus, enjoy access to the American Express Global Lounge Collection. And with the welcome offer of 150,000 points, your business can soar to all new heights. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-platinum. Amex Business Platinum. Built for business by American Express.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. Sometimes the most painful part of getting sick is the getting better part. Waiting on hold for an appointment, sitting in crowded waiting rooms, standing in line at the pharmacy, that's painful. Amazon One Medical and Amazon Pharmacy remove those painful parts of getting better with things like 24/7 virtual visits and prescriptions delivered to your door. Thanks to Amazon Pharmacy and Amazon One Medical, healthcare just got less painful.
She's not a pleasant character as Margot. She's very over the top. She's very inconsiderate to other people. She's rude. She takes advantage of her star status. And when she has a breakdown at her party, which is sort of about Eve and her future, she gets drunk and makes a pianist play the same piece of sad music over again and is very hard to deal with. And she can't really tell anyone why. Why is she doing that? They ask her why she's doing that. But to me, it seems very clear it's because she's aware of being usurped. She's aware of how big a deal that is, and everyone around her is acting like that isn't the reality. She knows full well it is.
Hey everybody, and welcome to this episode of Flixwatcher. You're listening to number 61. So we are joined by Beth.
Hello.
And David.
Hello.
From the podcast Wooden Overcoats, and we're going to be talking about All About Eve. Not All About Steve. Not that one. I've been recently listening to all of my podcasts and all of my music using the Studio Regent headphone, which is a premium on-ear model Bluetooth headphone, which means there's no wires, people, which did scare me. I didn't want anything else to charge up. But the battery life is 24 hours, which is amazing. And you can get your own pair of the Studio Regent at studio.com. Think Phil Collins, studio. Use the offer code Flixwatcher and you'll get 15% off any purchase, and you get free delivery worldwide. So if you are in Timbuktu, they'll fly it over to you. #poet. Guys, if you want to get in touch, join us on Twitter at FlixWatcherPod. Come and visit us on our website, flixwatcher.tv, and go to iTunes. Subscribe to us, review, and share with your friends, because sharing is caring.
All films featured in the podcast were available to stream on Netflix UK at the time of recording, and please be aware there will be spoilers and some language that may offend. Hello, welcome to Flixwatcher podcast. Today we are joined by Beth and Dave. If you would like to say hello and tell our listeners about your podcast/show.
Hello, this is David. I'm the creator and head writer on Wooden Overcoats, which is a sitcom about rival funeral directors on a Channel Island.
Which Channel Island?
Is on the Channel Island of Piffling, which is entirely fictional, despite some reviews we've had to the contrary.
What they said?
Yes, they said, have you researched this place properly? And I said, well, as much as I can.
By that rationale, you've made everything up about it, so you've done all the research that needs to be done.
I've had long conversations with myself just to get the facts straight, yeah.
And I play Antigone Funn, the mortician in Wooden Overcoats, who spends all the time embalming bodies and trying to defeat Chapman, the superior undertaker.
I think we need to get you guys to explain what Wooden Overcoats is.
Wooden Overcoats is, there's a funeral director called Rudyard Funn and his twin sister Antigone, and they run a funeral home called Funn Funerals on the island of Piffling. It's a funeral home that everyone has used because it's the only one, and even though it provides terrible service, until the day that Eric Chapman, this absolutely bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, deliciously handsome gentleman, moves into the island and opens up his own funeral parlour across the square, and everybody goes, oh, I must get my funerals done at Chapman's. And it's all about the Funns trying to claw back a bit of business of themselves over the course of the series, with a narrator who's also a mouse.
Madeline the Mouse.
Hey, Madeline the Mouse, yeah.
And we've had Felix, who plays... Felix doesn't play Chapman. Felix plays your brother, your twin brother.
Rudyard, yes.
And Chapman, played by Tom Crowley. They've been on our show.
They have indeed.
Yeah, and they chose Pirates, an adventure with
scientist and the woman in black.
Yeah, ideally. Fantastically.
Yeah.
Right, we're talking all about Eve. Beth, you chose the film. Why did you choose it and what happens?
I suppose I chose All About Eve largely because I wanted to watch it again. I think I first saw it when I was a kid and I was too young to fully get it. But I remember Betty Davis as this sort of very iconic actress figure and snatches of it. And then I watched it again 5 years ago and I thought it was brilliant. And it really does stand up to repeat viewing. So it's all about theatre. And
why is that of interest to you? Out of interest, Beth?
So I'm an actor. I guess my background is theatre. I trained in theatre and still work in it. And this is about the very competitive world of theatre in 1950, very much focused on stage and actors vying for positions for parts. So we start with an award ceremony narrated by the wonderful George Sanders as Addison DeWitt, who's a theatre critic who's very powerful, and he introduces us to this sparkling world where Eve is about to win an award, and then we flash back and we get to meet Mrs. Richards, who narrates most of the film. She is a very successful playwright's wife. She's slightly outside and within this world of the theatre, and she is coming to see her friend Margot Channing, who's a huge star and is performing every night in a play, and she's noticed a woman who watches and waits for her to come out at stage door every night, and she goes to see the play every night, and this is Eve. And she takes pity on her and brings her in to meet her apparent idol, Margot Channing, who is the ferocious and fantastic Betty Davis. And everyone is enraptured by Eve, and she sort of insinuates herself into her idol, Margot Channing's life, and becomes incredibly helpful, almost creepily helpful. And it sort of emerges that what she wants most of all is to be an actress herself. And she's young and beautiful, and little by little she manages to inch her way in and inch Margot out. And it's just a fascinating take on that world with some fantastic performances and this dazzling cast. And I loved watching it again and sort of wanted to give everyone the opportunity to watch it again.
That's a great synopsis there.
Yes, very detailed.
Yeah. David, what are your thoughts? Was this the first time you've seen it? Or
Like Beth, I've seen it a couple of times before. Not when I was a child, I must admit, but I've seen it a few times, and it's always been a film I've absolutely loved. I do think it's one of the best films made. It is one of my favourite films, so I was really delighted when Beth chose it herself.
We've got we're going to have some high scores, I feel, from you.
Oh yeah, no, I think it's like Beth. I think it's a beautifully written, performed, directed film. And watching it again, you know, I think the story just stands up incredibly well. I always, in a way, think that the plot is more complicated than it is, but watching it, it goes at its own pace. But all the details in the characters and the emotions and beautiful, very witty, cutting dialogue all the way through. And it's again, and I think though it's a slightly longer running time, it always feels much shorter to me. Right. I must admit, I think it's got a really cracking story which it follows at its own pace. You get a lot of those characters, you get a lot of the conflict, and I also think it's very funny.
I think one thing I want to point out here before getting to Helen is if she doesn't like a film or the idea of a film, I quite often get a text beforehand saying it's 2 hours and 5 minutes long. So this film's like 2 hours 20.
It is.
Yeah.
And I didn't get a text from you beforehand, so I figured by that you're quite looking forward to watching this film. Am I right?
Well, I've seen it. I only saw it recently, a couple of months ago, because I was after something to watch and asked our fellow quiz team people what I should watch on Netflix, and this was suggested to me, and I was like, is that on Netflix?
Was that by Will?
It was, yeah. Will and Gareth both suggested it, and I was like, I need to see that, so I watched it straight away. So this is my second viewing.
So how do people hear about this film? Because
it's a classic.
Yeah, but that's the thing. You need to have someone to introduce you to. Because I watched things like The Third Man and because I did general studies one of the lessons that we had was like film studies. I don't know how we got away with it. So at the same time as watching Godfather and things like I brought Dazed and Confused to the table. So the teacher brought The Third Man and those kind of films. And that's how I got introduced to films like this. How did you guys get introduced to?
I can't really remember the first time. I think this is an era of films that, David, you've watched a lot of films from this period and I haven't necessarily. I suppose for me, Bette Davis, it's sort of a performance that people associate with her. And so I was interested in that. I guess over Christmas I thought of it again because of Feud, the BBC series about Bette Davis and Joan Crawford being rivals, and sort of led me to think about those iconic actresses again and that sort of time in Hollywood. I think that's kind of how I heard about it.
Yeah, it's similar for me. It's one of those films which I went through very much a period, I think, at university of, going to... I went to Edinburgh and the Princes Street had a huge HMV, which I would go into, and they had all the films, and there was a FOP as well. All the films, these classic films, at £3, £4, £5 each. And I don't think I'd seen any films of Bette Davis, and I thought, well, that's something I need to correct. George Sanders is an actor I've always loved in anything I've seen him in of the period. And it's just, when I was looking, I was looking at the DVDs and said, this is a film with 14 Oscar nominations. Yeah. It was hugely beloved. So winning Best Picture, Best Director, Best Screenplay, Casting Supporting. It had a huge pedigree, and it was also about theatre and film. I thought, well, it sounded just like a really interesting story.
So even back then, the Oscars loved theatres. They loved stories about acting.
Oh yeah. I think it's one of those things that recurs, isn't it? That Hollywood loves films kind of about Hollywood, though actually all the way through of how do everyone's involved in theatre. The idea of going to Hollywood and making fills is regarded as an insult for an actor's craft all the way through the film, which I find very, very funny. Yeah.
What about yourself? Do you, Helen?
Well, I'd say I only saw it this year, but I'd always known about it. I mean, I think it's probably the defining Bette Davis film, and it's just one of those kind of classic Hollywood films, and obviously made probably not that long before they sort of turned to colour, so one of the last black and white great.
Sure.
And it's really funny. When I watch it, I think this is the kind of film that the artist really wants to be.
Were you not that big a fan of the artist?
No, I mean the artist is just kind of a parody of all the great films without actually doing anything new or particularly interesting.
I feel the same way. I was a bit, because I saw the trailer in cinema going, that's really exciting.
Beth is not happy.
She's not. No, I saw the trailer when it was originally released. That looks brilliant. I really want to see it. And I saw the film, and
it's a film no one talks about now.
I love it. Aesthetically, it looks beautiful. It's gorgeous. But I think I was a bit disappointed. It was basically the same plot as A Star Is Born as well. Yeah, it's the same plot I'd seen a few times. And, I really wanted something a bit different. But I still really, really like it. Probably not as much as Beth is dying to tell me why we're wrong.
No. I think maybe it's because I'm not so familiar with the era that it's trying to evoke, and so for me, sort of seeing that transition from talking to not talking was really interesting, and I'd never quite seen anything like that. But in a way, maybe it will make me go back and look at the films it's actually based on, and that might be more interesting and more rewarding long term. But I did enjoy it.
It's a beautiful film, though. It does copy a lot of us, but it's a beautifully made film. It's certainly worth watching.
I love the artist, especially the dog.
But the dog. It got my dad to the cinema for the first time in 14 years.
Oh, really?
Prior to that, the last film he saw was Attack of the Clones, and after that he was like, done.
Killed him off.
I'm not going to cinemas anymore.
Don't blame him.
What has he seen since?
He's seen a few things since. He saw Whiplash.
Okay.
He has been out to the cinema a little bit more, so things are looking up.
I was going to say like La La Land, he might have pulled him out.
No, La La Land he waited to watch at home.
Okay.
Yeah, so I really enjoyed All About Eve. Like I say, I knew nothing about it, and I do consider myself to be someone who has a decent kind of outlook on films. And I've seen and loved Citizen Kane, absolutely love. It's gone from my mind. Where's that film set in Bedford Falls?
It's a Wonderful Life.
That's the one.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name, but I love that film. So this just never seemed to cross my radar as a film to watch. And looking at me and my wife a few years ago, did like the top 100 IMDb films and came across things like, for the first time, that I'd never seen, like 12 Angry Men. I'm just talking about black and white.
Is this not on it then?
I can't remember.
Oh, okay.
But so that's probably one of the things that probably was there, but it just didn't attract me by the name. So I'm really glad that this, one of the reasons why we do this podcast is to say suggest films to ourselves here and to people who are listening that they may not have thought about or heard about. So kudos to you for suggesting it. We should say Marilyn Manson.
Yeah, it's
Marilyn Manson has a
Manson is in the film.
An astonishing cameo. But, Marilyn Monroe.
Earlier performances.
Yeah. So where's this in her canon?
Pretty early, I
Yeah.
think. It's not the very first, but it's pretty early on.
She's got a few sort of films of small appearances, and in sort of 1950 she has The Asphalt Jungle and All About Eve. She has small appearances that are enough to get her noticed. She gets like a 7-year contract at Fox off the back of these two tiny, sort of not quite cameos, little guest appearances. Within 1 year, she's appearing on the posters for films. Within 2 years, she's top billing. And then, of course, sadly, within 10 years, she's no longer alive halfway through the making of a film. So it's a real sort of it's enormous of firework of a career. And I think, Beth, you were saying when we were watching it the other day, it's almost totemic in terms of the themes of this particular film.
I think so, because obviously she wouldn't be there if she wasn't very charming and Marilyn Monroe, but no one could have known exactly what was going to come ahead. And in a film that's very much about older actors, well, more specifically older actresses being displaced by younger actresses, here we have Marilyn Monroe not really in it very much, but very much there. And I think I've heard that Bette Davis was a little bit harsh with her and dismissive.
I could imagine she was.
And would have had no idea what was about to happen, which was that Marilyn Monroe would become hugly iconic compared to anyone in the film, really, even these huge stars.
And it's really interesting watching, this life of, dog-eat-dog world, and where your career, it can, end like that. That in this film, George Sanders, who's the very intelligent one who knows how the business goes, he knows how Hollywood operates and how the theatre operates, and the theatre's in his blood, he keeps telling us. And yet even he, it's more of a meta reading, but even he can't tell that this person he's shopping around, played by Marilyn Monroe, is actually going to be a massive star within less than a year. And it's really interesting to see how the film, the story of the film operates outside of its narrative through just having this actor there that they couldn't have known anything about, really, at that stage. And yet Marilyn Monroe, within 12 months after that film, is already, she's starring in pictures, one of the most iconic, probably more iconic in a way than Bette Davis, at least from a visual standpoint. She's, it's an incredible way of the film actually showing how true it is. And it couldn't have known that, but it's that's one of those interesting things watching it back.
There's a few things that it kind of alludes to. That become apparent decades down the line.
Yeah.
One of the things, obviously, the main thrust of the storyline is Bette Davis is quote unquote old. She's just reached 40. And therefore she needs to be. That's why she needs to be usurped by the younger generation. And this is something that comes in time and time again with female actors in particular, in that there's a stage of 20 up to 25ish, and then there's a gap, and then there's like mum, maid, and then there's another gap, and then there's grandmother. And but what's wrong? So this, I don't know how relevant this 40 was. This 40 years age point, was that really striking at this time in the 1950s, or was it?
I think it's still. There are some actors who, you look at the career of someone like Mae West, who was, this huge sort of glamorous actor from the 30s, and very much sort of wrote her own dialogue and was this huge sort of style icon. And I was like, as an actor, had her own brand of being these sort of very sexy, curvaceous, very strong-willed characters, but also throughout her career insisted that she was the same age that she was in the 30s. So when they get to like 1970, she's doing a romantic musical comedy with Timothy Dalton, and she's always people are saying how much they basically want to sleep with her, and she's very much an older very much an old lady by that point, which is not obviously itself a problem, but it is quite an odd fit for that particular film, because the characters are specifically talking to her as if she's still like 25. But I think even at this period, and it's always been the case, but all the male characters are usually much older. The female characters, you tend to, if you're watching these films this era regularly, younger female characters or actors don't tend to be in that many films. They don't tend to stay, they're in a few, disappear, and then suddenly 20 years later will be character actor parts. And I think it is quite a damning critique, which is very true and probably still true today. Yeah,
I think we sort of think 40 is very young to be worked up about. And Bette Davis is 42 when she's making this. She says that she's 40, and her director, boyfriend, and then husband, Bill, is 30.
Yes, that's one thing I noticed. It's a rarity in this.
That's interesting, yeah.
I think the actor is actually 35, so there is that age gap, and then they actually do get married in real life,
Oh, nice.
which is kind of nice. But I suppose Bette Davis keeps working for years after this. But it was interesting what you're saying, Helen. Maybe this is the defining Bette Davis role. She's a brilliant actress, but maybe she doesn't have that many roles that really give her a chance to show everything she's got. She's won Oscars earlier in her career, but her later career is a bit more checkered. She's not the first choice for this part in All About Eve. She's not even the first casting. No. I think
Claudette Colbert.
It had an accident or something.
Yeah.
And Bette Davis sort of snaps up the part thinking what a great opportunity it is for her. And I think that says a lot about how much of a fight it can be for her to get those parts. I think she's one of the actresses who was labelled box office poison around that time. So there's a lot to contend with as an older 40, how terrifying, actress. I mean, I think Anne Baxter is 27 in this. So
Anne Baxter plays Eve.
Anne Baxter plays Eve, absolutely. Yeah. So she's not 18, but she's got those crucial 10 years.
She's also already at this point an Oscar-winning actor. At this point, she's already been in a lot of films, so that's quite interesting. Yeah, the age gap, as supposed in the film, is not actually as true in real life, and yet we still kind of buy it and we go along with it. And I think it's something to do with the eyes as well. Bette Davis. There are some shots I just burst out laughing because she just exudes absolute poison just by staring at people, not by looking at them. Sometimes it's Evie's being praised and you cut to Bette Davis, she's just looking off camera and they're kind of, Christ, why am I here? And it's brilliant. I mean, what a fantastic set of expressions. I need to see more Bette Davis films. I just think she's magnificent in anything I've seen her in.
Can we think about any actresses that have managed to be consistently acting through a range of ages?
I'm a massive Katharine Hepburn fan, and I think you've got some performances where she's very young and she's working right up until she's quite ill, and you can see that on camera. So she has a very long career with 4 Oscars that sort of span from quite early to quite late. She was also called box office poison for a while, so and tended to not go to Oscar ceremonies.
I mean, modern Meryl Streep as well.
Meryl Streep today, I think. Yeah, I mean, she's all over everything.
She's still kick-ass at the moment in The Post. Is she Oscar nominated for The Post?
I can't remember. I mean, she should be. She's very good in it. Yeah.
Post is one film I've actually seen this year.
Yeah. Actually managed to see The Post. No, I've seen it. Actually, another actor on those lines that most people wouldn't think was actually Angela Lansbury, who
that's true.
Early in her career, she's in films where she is, and it's difficult to believe in a way. Angela Lansbury is the glamorous young ingenue character that the hero is lusting after in. I think she's in Samson and Delilah. I think. And then she's an evil villain in The Manchurian Candidate in the 60s. And so she is an actor who works very, very consistently, but all we really remember her for is, doing sort of murder mystery things and being in productions of Blithe Spirit and being this sort of fruity older character actor. But she was working very consistently.
I think female actresses tend to have a better deal because we can think of like Helen Mirren and quite a lot. I can't think of any names.
Judi Dench.
Judi Dench. People like that who.
You mean in the UK or?
Yeah, well, British actresses tend to. I don't know. Maybe America is a bit more kind of cutthroat, and the roles aren't there. But if you think of someone like Helen Mirren as well, they've had fairly decent roles all the way through their career.
Yeah, true.
But in the sort of the availability of roles and something, I think Beth, you'd be able to speak more on it. It always seems that the categories are sort of parts you can play. As I think Kobi, you were saying, is usually it's this sort of younger parts who tend to be romantic parts, and then there's a bit of a barren wasteland until you get to, there's a few sort of mumsy parts and you have old lady parts, but the quality of roles for a lot of female actors is actually quite limited.
I think it depends on the sort of casting you have. If you're Bette Davis, I mean, she goes through films playing a lot of villains, but she's a woman with a huge sort of slightly terrifying and wonderful sexuality, and you think, what happens to that as you get older? Is that going to be something that's going to be allowed to be put on screen? I mean, I'm so on her side in this film, especially watching it now compared to when I was younger. But I think she's not a pleasant character as Margot. She's very over the top. She's very inconsiderate to other people. She's rude. She takes advantage of her star status. And when she has a breakdown at her party, which is sort of about Eve and her future. She gets drunk and makes pianists play the same piece of sad music over again and is very hard to deal with. And she can't really tell anyone why. Why is she doing that? They ask her why she's doing that. But to me, it seems very clear it's because she's aware of being usurped. She's aware of how big a deal that is, and everyone around her is acting like that isn't the reality. And she knows full well it is. And in the end, she seems to have a sort of happy ending because she marries Bill, her boyfriend, and they're going to go off and be happy, and that seems to be what she wants. But the film doesn't necessarily indicate that her acting career will continue.
Yeah,
which is interesting.
It's a troubling end. I mean, the bit when we were watching and when she says she having an argument with Bill in the theatre, and he's giving off what he thinks of her, and she says, "You're clearly not a woman," and it's just a really interesting quite. And he says, "No, I suppose I'm not." And even when she's directly criticising him for saying, "Look, you just don't understand things from my point of view," he still doesn't. But it is. I always think in some ways it's. I don't wonder if it is a sort of a feminist film. They're very strong roles, the female cast.
Yeah.
They say it's a film that the only one with 4 acting nominations for 4 female actors, and it's got some wonderful
How
parts.
does that work?
So I think it's 2 lead and 2 supporting actresses.
Okay. Yeah.
So
So,
Anne Baxter and Betty Davis are nominated.
And then the supporting role is Celeste Holm, who's the playwright's wife.
And the narrator figure who sort of takes us through everything.
And Thelma Ritter, who is only in the first sort of half an hour or so, but she's the sort of Betty Davis assistant for a while. The sort of one who I think she's also in Rear Window, for any Hitchcock fans listening, and she plays roughly the same character in that, and she's also brilliant.
She's fab, though, and she
sees
through Eve quite quickly, which is a lot of fun.
And the part was written for her, apparently.
Okay.
They said, I love working with an actor. Let's have a part. Let's have a Thelma
Just
Ritter
write
part.
it for her.
And
just
cast
put her in.
Thelma Ritter.
Yeah.
But it is really the bit that sort of sticks out, I suppose, now is Betty Davis. This idea of her, happy ending is getting married and going off with this chap, and I don't need. In a way, it's happy because she gets out of this horrible rat race of people biting each other. But on the other hand, there's something not quite. That's the bit I suppose sticks out a bit to a modern viewing.
Because that's nowadays the thing that they're trying to move away from in Disney films, is saying once you get married, you're happy and da-da-da. And recent Disney films, Moana and Zootropolis,
you can have
for
a
example.
career, you can follow your dreams.
Exactly.
You don't need a man by you.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you, as you're watching it, you sometimes feel that the ending should be that she realizes, well, I can't play those particular sort of young ingenue parts anymore, but actually I'm going to have rather more interesting roles over here, or my career will continue but in a different fashion. But maybe that would muddy the themes of the film a bit too much. I don't know. I wanted Margot Channing to continue and do all these things. Very much aware we're probably spoiling the end of the film here. I'm not sure if that's a problem for the listeners. Now we're going to recommend it.
We are allowed spoilers, that's fine. Let's talk a bit about what's Thelma's character called again?
Birdie.
Because I really liked how this film played out, and because, as you said, Bird was the first person to see it. Pretty much straight away, she kind of thought, she's a wrong'un in some way, shape, or form, and then slowly the other people started to twig that there's something going on here until the secret was fully uncovered in an almost like Mad Men kind of way. And also, have you guys? I've not seen it, but have you guys seen Single White Female?
I haven't. No.
Okay, well, there's no point talking about it because I don't know the story. I thought one of you guys might have seen it. I just thought there might be this thing about a single white female who turns up random. I don't know what the story is, the synopsis is for Single White Female, but I thought that might be it, alluded purely by the title. Yep. So the idea that this one person comes in and she just kind of takes over everything, but slowly ingratiates herself into where she doesn't quote unquote belong, and she's got this really. Yeah. She has got a master plan straight away from the start. She's lying about who she is. Yeah, does it really well. Does it really convincingly, and then one by one.
But she is rumbled.
Exactly. Well, first of all, she gets exactly what she wants to, and then gets rumbled by the critic chap.
Yeah, in a rather kind of uncomfortable way. He claims that she belongs to him, which obviously in our kind of post-Weinstein environment, it's kind of like it's happening then, and it's happening now.
What that means exactly then for this.
Well, he says that she belongs to him. He's kind of rumbled her. He'll make her. He can break her, and that's kind of it. She needs to kind of give herself to him in quite probably the most uncomfortable scene of the film, probably.
Yeah, so Addison DeWitt he is the first narrator we hear, and he seems to have been very useful to Eve, helping her with her career. When she gets her first opportunity to understudy Margot, he writes articles about how wonderful her performance was and helps to sort of sell her sob story that she's told everyone, and put forward the idea that young actresses shouldn't have to wait for older actresses to retire. So he's very useful to her early on. And she's so clever and has everything so worked out, she perhaps doesn't reckon on the idea that he has an agenda too, as it turns out, which he makes very clear at the end when he confronts her with the fact that he has figured out the holes in her story, has figured out that she made up her name, that she's invented her dead husband, that her background is a lot less innocent than it seems, and that he is prepared to hold that over her in ways that are slightly ambiguous but also clear.
That's what I was trying to get at with the I own you thing.
Yeah.
You belong to me thing. Is that as dark as they don't make, like I say, they don't make it that obvious, but is it construed as to be as dark as I don't want it to be?
I would think so. I mean, presumably, in that day and age, they obviously wouldn't have been able to have anything on screen, but that's clearly what's implied. And obviously at the end of the film, he's sort of still hanging around. He's still very much kind of there in a slightly creepy Weinstein kind of way. Because
it's George Sanders who, again, also despite the 4 Oscar nominations for female roles, he is actually the only one who comes out with an actual Oscar win at the end of all this. You have this man with the wonderful sort of velvety voice that he uses as Shere Khan in the Jungle Book, and we absolutely adore.
Oh, okay, nice.
Yeah, we absolutely adore this character because he's got all his witty lines, and he hates everyone. He doesn't mind that everyone hates him, so we kind of enjoy it. And so there is that kind of the unpleasantness of the character we really like. And I'm not sure we're necessarily rooting for him because he's not going to do anything except carry on his career and have a bit of fun. But seeing that in that scene where he is sort of being very unpleasant, he thinks, we've really liked you, and we still kind of do because of who you are, George Sanders. But actually, this is very unpleasant. And there's almost a slight sort of sexual distancing of this. There is a slight camp quality to George Sanders in a way. He says, we are people who cannot love, and something, that sort of a sexual quality is never, as you say, never stated, but. It's a very strange quality that he brings to the film, and in those scenes where I wonder if you say it was remade, you probably would have somebody much more overtly, I don't know,
leering.
Yeah, as you say, somebody he probably, but when he's yelling at her and being very unpleasant, he's still several feet away, standing there looking down, still his suit and very immaculate. Whereas now you think it probably would go rather further, be even more unpleasant in a way I don't even think we'd really need, but it probably would. No, I find those things really interesting as well, especially if it's a character who we really like, and by the end you go, we shouldn't have been liking you, because you're horrid.
So a couple of things before we go to the scores. The first is, you said remade, but there is a film called All About Steve.
Which I know nothing about, I must admit.
Yeah, we pass on that.
We have to look it up on Wikipedia.
From what I understand, it was a Bradley Cooper vehicle. No, it wasn't a Bradley Cooper vehicle, but they made the film and said, "Oh, this is shit. I'm going to throw this away." But then Bradley Cooper became famous from Hangover, and then they were like, "Let's release this." I think that's the film. But with Sandra Bullock as well.
I do.
Where she...
Yeah, but I don't think it's about...
Is it a remake?
It's not a remake.
No, I'm not saying it's a remake. I'm just saying it's
title
just
steal.
They've stolen it, yeah.
They have. Just they played with the title.
They played with the title, yeah.
Apparently it was made as a musical in the 70s. I reliably told by Wikipedia. I've got my data.
Wikipedia don't lie.
In which apparently... it was in the early 70s, called Applause, which I'd love to see. I'm sure it'd be fantastic. But apparently the Margot Channing, Betty Davis role in the musical at one point was played by Anne Baxter, who plays Eve in the film. So she sort of waited 20 years, came back and played the role that she was trying to usurp in the film, in the musical.
Like the ending of the film.
Yeah. Very much,
Comes around.
Yeah. Presumably that means this play, All About Eve should be brought back about once every sort of 20, 30 years.
Nice.
Until the end of human civilization, I think. It's a very, very good story.
And the last thing I wanted to ask was Eve's backstory. She's not that good a con person if she hasn't even researched the name of theatres in San Francisco.
It's very vague, isn't it?
Yeah. I was like, dude, you got to do.
Yeah, but the thing is, there's no internet then, Kobi.
Yeah.
You couldn't just like hop on the internet and Google. You'd have to have been there and then happen to meet someone who had also been there and have them challenge you.
I get that. That's true. But you're meeting people who are prevalent in an industry that you're trying to get into. You should at least know the name of a place where you quote.
You're thinking too much.
I think it would be.
Don't overthink this film.
If you had a modern remake, the moment where she, Eve first comes and sits down and starts telling everyone, it would be ruined if everyone said, hang on, they all got out their phones and went, that's just bollocks, mate, what are you talking about? And just kicked her out. It would be 10 minutes long.
I'm here on IMDb, I just can't see anything here.
Actually, that scene itself is amazing. When I was watching it, I thought it's really nice and quite clever. Having been someone, I've written in the past scripts that involve people trying to put on plays, etc. And you always try to avoid having, if people are putting on a fictional play, you don't want any of the actual fictional dialogue because it's boring for the audience and it's difficult to write. But all the way through this film, there are several plays they're performing. You never see them. You never see the performances. They're auditions. And you think, and everyone's saying how great Eve is. And it would be really awkward if you had to see Eve actually, giving the best acting of her lifetime in the film. Yeah. But that scene where she's telling everyone her backstory, and I was watching thinking, oh, this is going on a bit, and realising, oh, this is her audition for the entire film. If we buy her in this, which we all do along with the cast, and it is shot like it's an audition, she sat there in front of 5 individuals. And I thought, it's the first time I realised that, going, oh, that's very clever. That's handy for the story. Also stops you having to write some difficult scenes later. Well done.
Because also it's really funny because the play and the dress that Bette Davis wears for this play is quite ridiculous. And I was sort of imagining what kind of performance requires this dress and gives, everyone this like, oh my God, it's the best performance ever.
Yeah, Beth was saying that.
You're left thinking like, it's a really bizarre costume.
I think they have to have little bits of theatre there, but in a way, and not being there helps us to keep it sort of fresh in our minds and fill in the blanks ourselves, because the minute you see her in that costume you think,
what kind of play this is?
Not a skirt. How can you move around?
and it's presumably the play, that is it, because it's a period piece, but the play that the playwright Lloyd is doing later on, we see a brief bit of an argument, and that appears to be much more of a modern sort of kitchen sink type. So, there's some young chap with a furrow brow sat at the table going, oh dear, and it's in a kitchen or something. So presumably Margot Channing was meant to be in a much more modern play later, which she then decided not to bother with. And whether that's meant to be an intentional thing of, again, the sort of difference of ages, here you are in a period piece, but you shouldn't be in this modern play, I don't know. But it's, in a way, I'd like to have seen a few of those scenes. I mean, what on earth, what the fuss was about. But I think, Beth, you said even when you actually see them bowing, it sort of breaks the suspension in a way. We kind of don't really want to see them performing. Yeah.
Helen, what are those in your ear?
What, these sexy things?
Sexy, okay.
These are my new Trey wingtip inner ear headphones.
Where do you get those Trey tipped wing earphones?
They have come from the wonderful people at
Studio.com. And how do I get a pair?
You can visit their website, and if you use the code Flixwatcher, not only will you get a new pair of headphones, but you will also get 15% off your purchase.
15% is bargain. Magnificent. Okay, well, I'll head over there right now. And so should you, listeners. Get your 15% off. Use the code Flixwatcher. This has been a sponsored announcement on Flixwatcher Podcast.
Let's get to the scores.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
So these are our patented Flixwatcher scores.
Yep.
First up is the recommendability score. So they're all the scores are out of 5.
Ooh.
And basically, how much do you recommend this film? And we'll start with you, Beth, as it's your choice.
I think 5. I think, people should watch it. It's part of history and it's got a lot to say.
What would your score have been how old were you when you first watched this?
I don't know. I think I was just a kid, maybe
2.
No.
Were you double digits then?
I think so, maybe 10 or so.
Okay. So what are your thoughts at this? What would your recommendability score be? No Tom and Jerry, so 1.
No Tom and Jerry. I think as a kid I would have found it a bit confusing.
Yeah.
So maybe 3.
David? 3 is still quite high if you...
This is confusing.
So this is for you
Standard.
now as an adult. We don't need you to go back to your 10-year-old self to think about how you'd score
I
it.
think I'd go with that. I do think it's a great film. It's I go with a good clear 5.
Helen?
This is a 5. This is a classic. This is. I mean, we've touched on it a little bit, but it's really, really funny.
Yeah.
It's really biting, and the performances in it are great, and it's really timeless, as we've obviously sort of picked it apart a little bit now. But if you're still listening and haven't seen it, then what are you waiting for? Stick it on now.
I'm going to go for a 4.1. And I really like it. And but the reason I'm not going to go towards the 5 stratosphere end of the scoring, patented scoring system, is because when I saw films like 12 Angry Men, for example, and It's a Wonderful Life, I was just literally, like, my mind was blown as to, like, this is amazing. I just loved the story, I loved everything about it. And I think All About Eve is fantastic. And I can kind of see why it maybe just didn't enter my realm of thinking. But it's a great film. I guess I'm judging it against...
I mean, those two are also 5-star films.
Yeah. But I think, based on that scale, there wouldn't be 5-star recommendations for me.
Yeah.
What?
There'll still be Back to the Future, still a 5, and everything else is graded down from there. Repeat viewing score. So, Beth, you've seen it 3 times now?
I have. I have to say 5. I think I'd love to watch it again in a year's time. I think there's a lot of detail in there, and it's really beautifully made, and there are a lot of great performances. So I would say watch it again.
I think I go to a 4 on it, because I do think though I think it's a 5-star film, it's a film that I think benefit. I hadn't seen it for a while, and I'd forgotten a lot of it, so it's a film that I think I don't want to go back to again while I can still remember it freshly, because I in the same way that it might not be sort of a mind blowing in the 12 Angry Men way, which I also absolutely adore. It is a film which I like to sort of not see these old friends again. It's like it's a very sort of oddly, it's not say soothing film. It's a very sort of velvety film. It's not to sort of put on and wear. It's a beautiful film that I kind of want to forget about and then come to it again and then love it all over again. So I give it a 4 because it's one I definitely want to see again, but it won't be for a couple of years, I think.
I like it.
I'm also going to go for a 4. I did think, have I seen it recently enough to get away with not watching it again? Just because it was quite recent, probably only a couple of months ago. But I did give it another go, and I think you're right in saying it. A good amount of time should elapse between it, and then you sort of kind of remember enough of it to not be sort of what's going on, and then to kind of like enjoy the fabulous one-liners. But if you've seen it like a while ago and you're thinking maybe you should give it a go again, then I'd really recommend you do.
Cool. I'll give it a 3. I think you definitely need to watch it again. I will watch it again. Because I think there's a lot more to take away from it than I would have seen the first viewing, and that's warrants it. But I don't think I will be watching it that frequently after.
2 hours and 18 minutes.
That's
It's quite
true.
a long one to be revisiting weekly.
Yeah. So the length of it does play into that fact. But like you say, the 2 hours and 50 minutes wasn't weighty.
It doesn't drag.
It didn't drag. And the story developed well at a pace, but subtly.
Yeah.
To keep you going, but not leave you lost at any point in the film as well. So I think it was, definitely. Small screen scores. Do you guys know what that is? Do you want an explanation?
Yeah, go on.
So how relevant is this how well does this work on a smaller screen, i.e. on this TV size down to...
Oh.
Yeah. So do you feel that you wished you'd seen this in the cinema the first time it came out?
Yes! I think I'd go for a 4.5. I would love to see this film on the cinema screen, but I think it's also a sort of perfect curl up on the sofa kind of film. It's black and white. Not that can't be wonderful. I mean, David buys them in Blu-ray, but it's great to curl up with on the sofa and watch, and you're not really losing anything. But it would be exciting to see it on the cinema too. So.
I think I'd agree with that. I think I'd give that a 4.5 because I think it's 1950. It's in a 4.3 aspect ratio for those who care about such things. But it's an old telly ratio.
Academy ratio.
You don't need it. It's not a widescreen film. It doesn't have huge special effects and massive sets and the rest of it. So you don't lose anything for watching it on television compared to cinema. But there is something I would adore watching it in a proper big cinema. seeing there, because it's a film about stars. It's a film about massive stars. You need to be in a large place to properly get that and see it in its context. So yeah, 4.5, absolutely acceptable watching it at home on television, but great to see it in the cinema.
Helen?
I'm going to go the same, 4.5. This is like a perfect Sunday afternoon film. And, you know, this is one of the things that is great about Netflix, that there are these hidden classics that are on there. And if you haven't seen them, they're there.
Yeah.
And you can check them out. But, yeah, I mean, it would have been nice to maybe see it at the cinema, but definitely TV size.
Yeah.
Curl up on that sofa, definitely.
How did you find this, Beth, by the way, on Netflix? Did you type it in to see if it was there, or was it recommended to you?
Yeah, no, I typed it in to see if it was there, I think, when thinking about this.
I'm going to give it 4.5 as well. I don't think you need to see it in the... I might nudge it up to 5, actually. I probably wouldn't want to see this in the cinema, to be honest with you. So probably nudge it up to 5 there.
Yeah.
But like you said, the Academy ratio, and what's the history of this film? Was it a play before it turned into film? Because
so it's a short story called the
Wisdom of Eve.
Wisdom of Eve, yeah, which was in itself based on an anecdote somebody was told, and they wrote this short story. Joseph L. Mankiewicz, writer director, looked at it and went, "Oh, that's good. I want to do that. Turn it into a script." Does a screenplay. Apparently, the producer gets involved and says, "You've made it a bit too obvious, and I'm going to hack 50 pages out of it." But generally, well done, Joseph. And they put it on. But it's very much based on the short story. I was surprised it wasn't based on a play. Yeah. I would have bet a lot of money on that, but very much a short story.
Yeah, I thought it played out as a play in its structure and in the scenes of the settings. I could easily see the sets being put onto the stage.
I'd love to see it on stage. I mean, I know there used to be a musical, but I think a straight theatre adaptation, I think it would go down pretty well.
Great, yeah.
In the West End, I think it'd do pretty well. If anyone's listening.
Engagement score. So how engaged were you whilst watching All About Eve, Beth?
5. It's predictable.
This is one of the highest scores. So you got an overall score of 4.875. Oh. Crikey. Well, you like this film a lot. So you're engaged all the way through.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. It's, as I said, it's not the shortest film, but I think it carries you along with it very well. I think we were saying, David, that the ending where the sort of new Eve girl turns up and then takes her clothes and stands in front of a mirror so you can see endless young girls coming up forever is possibly a little bit heavy-handed in that we sort of got that message already, but it's also a beautiful shot.
Yeah.
And up to that point, I'm not really bored or wanting it to be shorter at any point, but that's me.
I'm going to go with... Actually, I think, to be honest, controversial. I might go with 4. I think it's brilliant, again, absolutely, but I must admit, 2 hours, 20 minutes, I think it does benefit from stopping it halfway through for a cup of tea, which we did. And I think it does benefit from that. So it's not the sort of I must watch it all in one go. I certainly wouldn't walk away from it and watch it the next day. But I think it does benefit from, like they used to do in the old days, a bit an interval partway through the film. So I would
scream out.
Yeah, I'd like to. Exactly, I'd just stand up and get a cornetto and a cup of tea. Dunk my cornetto in the tea. Quarter of an hour maybe, and go back into it. So I'll give it a 4.5. Let's knock it up a bit. 4.5.
Helen.
I'm also going to go for the 4.5, just because the second time, because I'd seen it so recently, I wasn't as engaged, but the first time round, I was completely all the way. But in fairness of the times I've seen it, 4.5. I'm
going to give it a 4. 3.9.
Outrageous.
I didn't know these people apart from Marilyn Monroe. And when she came on the screen, it was like, "Is that Marilyn Monroe?" Stop. Wikipedia, IMDb. Check this out. Is this made? Yes. I was like on the internet trying to work out what's going on here. So I was just engaged. I was too engaged in other things to check out the story behind the film. And I could get quite a lot by just listening to the dialogue as well. I didn't feel often that I needed to be watching it, hence perhaps my small screen score. I didn't feel I needed to be looking at the screen to see exactly what's going on all the time. But there were some, like I said, looks of Bette Davis where she flashed a glance and so that's why it's higher than I thought it would be, because I think I'm sure I missed some bits because I wasn't paying full attention, and that's why I should watch it again. But maybe not many times.
Why Bette Davis is still such an amazing screen star, because a lot of the other actors, you can get a lot of what they're doing from listening to it alone. As you say, you can look away or look at your phone. But Bette Davis you just look at, and she's conveying so much of her character of the film just by sitting there and looking. I think you're a very firmly visual actor. There's so much you're doing by sitting there. You look like you could kill everyone in the room. If you shut the door, we came back 5 minutes, they'd be dead, and you'd be the only one there, still with a drink, completely drunk with a cigarette, and we believe that. I just think she's a brilliant visual actor as well. You just have to watch her performances.
So we have an overall score.
Is this a new winner?
I don't know. So we have, the overall score is 4.46. No, the overall winner is 4.7 with What We Do in the Shadows.
So
no.
close.
So 4 points.
This is the first real challenger we've had to...
Hunt for the Wilder People was also up there.
quite high.
So Hunt for the Wilder People was 4.1.
Yeah.
4.7. What were you?
So yeah,
this is great. I want to look at this a lot.
Stats.
I know.
Sharknado 3 only got what?
Yeah, 4.7.
Outrageous.
Yeah,
4.7 is
still not beaten, but
still not
close.
beaten. I think that might be
Contender,
second place.
definitely.
All About Eve is
Well, we're
second
up there.
place. So
Amazing.
Well done, Beth. Good shout.
I think if it was 20 minutes shorter,
Sure.
then it would have been a high. It'd be higher. So that's what tends to be instantly higher ratings films.
90 minutes.
Yeah, 90 minutes is
or less.
the sweet spot. Well, What We Do in the Shadows, like 8.1. Sorry,
yeah, so 81 minutes. Yeah.
Nice.
and we all said we can divide that quite happily into like 20-minute chunks as well.
Yeah.
So
it's a sitcom in the making.
Yeah.
Oh, what?
So well done. Yeah, fantastic.
Thanks for choosing it.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks for having us.
Cool. Guys, can you sign off by letting us know where we can find you on Twitter? And also, as we record this, season 3 of Wooden Overcoats is going out. So by the time you listen to this, guys, it will be the season 3. So recommend you go and listen to the first 2 seasons first before season 3 comes out. So you know what's going on. But tell us where we can find you online and your Twitter places.
And the website is www.woodenovercoats.com. You can also, of course, find it on all your usual podcast wares. And we are at Twitter at Overcoats Wooden. And also, if you type us into Facebook, Wooden Overcoats, you'll definitely find us there.
And do find us there.
Beth concur.
I do concur.
And if you want to listen to anyone else from Wooden Overcoats on Flixwatcher, we have 2 episodes with Felix and Tom. So they were on earlier on in our run.
Very early.
Yes. One of the first people we chatted with. Yeah. So check them out as well, and you'll hear their voices when you listen to the Wooden Overcoats podcast.
Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having us.
This
It's
has
been
been
lovely.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Well, thanks, guys, for listening to Flixwatcher podcast. Please do come and find us online. We're on Twitter at FlixWatcherPod. Come and visit our website, flixwatcher.tv. Thank you so much to our fantastic editor, Brendan Russell, for his fantastic editing skills, of course, and to Mighty People for the tunes you can hear right now.